We are back. Happy New Year, everybody. It's been a little bit of a long layoff for us.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of great stuff to talk about this week. We're going to do a little postmortem on LAFCA Awards, on the Oscar nominations, the Golden Globe Awards, where things stand going into the Oscars. Those who have, of course, followed our little odyssey, the short that my wife produced, that I executive produced, writer-director Brant Anderson's live-action film Refugee was shortlisted for the live-action category, and we were not one of the five nominees.
Close. To be shortlisted, I know I say this all the time, I'm not just being that, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And it was complicated, this whole way that the Academy, with the voting and this and that, and we can poke around that as much as we want. But I got to say that issues that I didn't care for.
Yeah. Well, we're happy to have been shortlisted. We're going to still get some mileage out of this film. People need to see it, and as soon as there is a way for our listeners to see it, we will make it known.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can actually go to the Refugee short film page on Facebook, and I think there is a link in the DigiGods and DigiGods Facebook groups where I had posted that. So, in any case, we were happy to be in the mix, and it was a thrilling moment. I have to say, it was the first time that I've ever watched the Oscar nomination announcement and felt invested in the moment as they're reading them off. And they go through them alphabetically, and it gets down to NEFTA Football Club, and alphabetically we would have been the next one. And I'm like, oh. Yeah. And then they said Saria, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Whatever. I don't want to disparage any of the little movies. All the little movies.
Yeah, it was a tough group.
Yeah.
I mean, 10
But there are
very
things going
films
on there that I feel like I can say anyway. I can say it. You know why I can say it? You know why I can say it? Because I'm black. Because I'm black, I can say this. And if I were white, I couldn't say it. Brant Anderson, white dude.
Yeah.
Brant Anderson, a white dude making a movie about the Syrian refugee, this sort of Arab issue. There are these other films floating around the same sort of territory made by.
There are two Tunisian Arabic language films that are nominated, which is unprecedented.
Directed by people of native this, that, or the other thing.
Native Arabic speakers.
And in this particular era that we're in, lots of things get filtered through.
True.
I'll go through these filters.
Yeah.
Of perception and ideas and who can do what and why and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes it brings us to landing in some very odd places.
Yeah.
Places that I don't like personally. I'm not. So I'll put it this way. Years and years ago, Spike Lee said that Norman Jewison couldn't direct Malcolm X because he wanted to direct Malcolm X, but specifically he said it had to be directed by an African American person, black person. Norman Jewison said, well, that's ridiculous. I'm Norman Jewison. I can direct Malcolm X, and it'll be a wonderful film.
It wouldn't be the same film.
Wouldn't be the same film. But he deferred to Spike. He said, but I want to see the film that young black man would make. I want to see that film.
Yeah.
But make no mistake, I can direct that movie. And I agreed with Norman, and I disagreed with Spike. Love me some Spike Lee, but Spike was wrong.
Yeah,
he was dead bang wrong. Glad he made that film, but I'd still love to see what Norman Jewison would do with the story of Malcolm X.
Another one of our favorite films, yours and mine, of last year was Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Which is written, directed, or co-written and directed by a white guy.
Yeah, Joe.
Who basically, in the movie, has a black actor play himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy Fails. Yeah.
Jimmy Fails.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of really interesting dynamics that are at play, but that takes us into another conversation with the Oscars. So first off, Golden Globes, I think Irishman's Shutout hurts it really badly.
Yeah.
And 1917's two surprise wins are not surprising now. It's one of the top four. I mean, Joker got 11. And then you got three films that got 10. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 1917. And
Marriage Story? No, not Marriage Story.
No, not Marriage Story. Hold on, gosh, why am I drawing a blank here? Joker, 1917. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Oh, and The Irishman.
And The Irishman is the other one got 10. Yeah, the Netflix.
So basically 4 films that got the same number of nominations, except for that one for Joker, which is really interesting. And so 1917 is clearly the dark horse that has kind of made its presence known late in the season.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. So I'm reading after the Oscars came out, everybody's getting off all into their, Oscars so white thing again. Like we had a few good years where it just felt like, oh, so much diversity. And now they're like, oh, they're doing it again. No, let me point something out. Yes, true. Jennifer Lopez and Lupita Nyong'o and a lot of other people, a lot of Black and Hispanic and Asian colors, Aquafina actors did not get nominated. True. A lot of women got shafted. Yes, true.
I really expected something for The Farewell, but
Yeah, Farewell. But here's what's interesting. I don't think that's the takeaway. I'd have loved for Eddie Murphy to get nominated. But you know what? Adam Sandler also didn't get nominated. Uncut Gems got totally shut out.
Yeah, the Safdie brothers film.
And here's the takeaway. This is what's interesting about those 4 films that I just talked about. The 4 most nominated movies, all of them 10 or more nominations. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Columbia Pictures. 1917, Universal Pictures. Joker, Warner Brothers. The Irishman, Netflix. Now, what's not there? An indie. There are no independent distributors or financiers anywhere in those 4. I have to go back and actually do the research, but I believe that may be the first time that has happened in maybe 30 years. And it's certainly the first time in like 20 years. Since 2001, the only major studio to have won Best Picture is Warner Brothers. They've done it 3 times: $1 Million Baby, the Ben Affleck thing, and The Departed.
Yeah,
right. Those are the only 3 studio released films. And Ben Affleck's thing you could almost call an indie because it kind of came to them that way.
Argo.
Universal has not won since 2001. Sony has never won a Best Picture in the years that they have owned Columbia ever. 1988. It's been over 30 years. Columbia is the second is tied with UA at 12 for the most Best Picture wins in history, and it won them all from the 30s through the 80s. 1987, when Sony took over the next year after they bought it from Coca-Cola, it went dry. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood could change that. It feels like the rise of the studios again. It could be a blip. It could be a one-off year. But maybe Netflix has lit a fire under the studios and made them think maybe we need to be making grown-up movies with real filmmakers again.
Well, it's an interesting thing because both Netflix and Marriage Story, both Irishman and Netflix films, that conversation that we were having about a year ago that Steven Spielberg started, the conversation seems to have gone away. It's not a thing that we're talking about this year. So I think that Netflix won that battle.
Except they're not going to win. Irishman's not going to win.
Going to win the award. So the question is, will they win the award?
Yeah.
But, look, in our organization, The Irishman didn't really get all that much love.
No.
It's not a film that I'm particularly big on for a whole bunch of reasons. But whatever with all of that. The Academy, though, is still kind of old school.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as I say that, I take a look and, Clint Eastwood, Richard Jewell.
Yeah.
That film
got nothing either.
Nowhere to be found at all. Well received critically, didn't do so well at the box office, though.
No.
Although we don't know how well The Irishman has actually done because,
they won't tell us.
No. So for all we know, those movies made the exact same amount of money.
I'm hopeful that we may be seeing a little turn back towards studios deciding they want to be competitive in the Oscar race again. That they're not going to, because it was around about the mid-90s, when Disney said, okay, Miramax will handle our award stuff, and Fox said, we'll let Fox Searchlight handle our award stuff, and Sony said, we're going to let Sony Classics handle our award stuff. And everybody had their little indie divisions. And then in 2005 and 6, a little more than 10 years later, they were like, this isn't worth it. It's not moving the needle on stock price. And they cut them all loose.
Yeah.
Paramount Classics turned into Paramount Vantage. And, it all went south. And I think now there's maybe a little bit of a turnaround. I think maybe they're saying they're looking at Netflix and they're saying, you know what, we can make these movies again and get a little bit of our reputation back because it can't all be comics.
Look, the studios committed themselves to big tentpole summer movies. For a good little while now. And for a while, the attention was turned to making those movies Oscar-nominatable movies. They did. Black Panther. You got in there. I'm a little surprised. 10 slots this year.
Endgame
did not get in there. Now, I know it's complicated. You have to reach thresholds and whatever to even get that empty slot. But I can think of 3 or 4 movies, at least a couple of them big, Endgame, that might have gotten into that slot. But I can think of a couple of small ones too. Last Black Man in San Francisco. Again, thresholds.
But it's an indie.
But it's an indie.
And the indies didn't fare well this year.
The fact that it's empty.
Ford versus Ferrari is a Best Picture nominee. That's a studio film too.
That's a studio film too. But that empty slot bugs me a little bit. Because I'm, the machinations of the math notwithstanding, The Farewell, and if you do if you put The Farewell in that slot. And if the director of The Farewell, Lulu, last name I can't
remember.
Wang. Thank you. Now you have 2 films directed by significant women, Greta Gerwig, Little Women, and now that whole conversation changes a little bit about both race and the race conversation. Look, Bong Joon-ho. Sometimes it bugs me a little bit that we pretend like that's not a man of color. He's Korean. He's a person of color. He's doing well. Nominated twice. Best Picture, Best International Film.
Best Director.
Nominated Best Director. That's a person of color showing up. The other thing that I will say about women. Look, I get it. Greta didn't get nominated as Best Director for Little Women. But let's make no mistake. There are lots and lots of women who may take that Academy Award stage if any one of those Best Pictures win. The second producer, a stage-taking producer on every one of those big-ass films is a woman.
And that has been overlooked.
It
is, and I will say this too, the Oscars can only honor the films that get made. And when in the directors category as well, I know they keep saying this, not enough women. Well, look, directors nominate directors, and the directors branch is historically male because men are the ones who have historically directed most of the movies. So they're the market from which the Academy has drawn that branch. If you want more women to get into the director's branch, more women need to be hired by studios to direct movies. And that's a change in mentality at the studio level. You need to convince them that, and they're doing it now with the superhero movies, but they need to understand women don't just, everybody gets pigeonholed.
Women's films.
We have a woman's film. Let's get a woman to direct it. Wonder Woman needs to be. Well, wait a minute. Maybe when Iron Man is directed by a woman, now we're talking.
Exactly.
Great. Black Panther is directed by a black director.
Young black man,
but when Superman is directed by a black director, now we've broken out of this mindset, this compartmentalization mindset.
When Superman is directed by a Somalian woman, then we're going to be all right in this town. Because, for whatever. So that's the thing that we have to sort of start letting that go.
By the way, if Quentin wins Best Director, as I think he will, that will be the first time that a native-born American, has won that award in over a decade.
Really?
Isn't that amazing?
I would not have known that.
Crazy, right?
I would not have known that. So anyway, I think these films, a lot of interesting films. I think it's more diverse. In all of these categories, then we're giving it credit for, and both in terms of gender and race. Sometimes we only look at those sort of marquee spots. Best director. Let me tell you something. If I'm a woman and I'm a second producer on The Irishman or A Marriage Story or Parasite, and go look them up. I promise you, if any one of those pictures, any one of the 9, win Best Picture, a woman is going to be taking that stage.
That's it.
As a producer. And that's a hell of a thing. That's a hell of a thing.
It is. So, interesting year for the Academy Awards, even if the film I worked on did not get nominated. But let's get into the new releases. And as it happens, Joker is out. This is recently out on 4K Ultra HD. And I've gone on about this multiple times. The Joker and Dolomite Is My Name are basically the same movie, flip sides. Yes, one of them is based on a true story. The other one's a comic character. But They're both period. Joker in the 1980s, Dolomite in the 1970s, pre-social media about failed stand-up comics who are trying to find their place in the world. Both are protective of women. Both have mother figures. Both have problematic histories with their fathers. On and on and on and on. And there are all kinds of parallels between the two. The difference being that Joker loses faith in society and becomes a villain, and Rudy Ray Moore will not lose faith in himself, and he becomes a star. And I just think the two films are such a fascinating sociological study in contrast. And I love them both. I think I love Dolomite more, but nonetheless, Joker, very interesting. 11 Academy Award nominations.
Yeah.
It's quite a thing.
I have a very odd sort of relationship with Joker. Look at that film. I can see, this is good filmmaking. I'm surprised. Todd Phillips, Hangover guy.
I know.
Not particularly big fan of any of that stuff. But he's bringing to bear some sort of interesting stuff. Here's the problem with that movie for me. The filmmakers. And I don't ascribe this to Joaquin Phoenix because it's not a thing that he can do.
Yeah.
But the rest of the filmmakers, the writers, the directors, they don't seem to know that character is a bad guy. And to me, that's it's an odd sort of thing. The way that they construct and all of it, they don't seem to get that. No, he's the bad guy. And I know that that's just sort of a point of what they do, but I'm like, but you're supposed to know he's a bad guy. He doesn't know he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But so anyway, interesting thing about that movie. He's the bad guy, folks.
Here's also what's interesting is that both the Joker and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood borrow a great deal of inspiration from Scorsese and are nominated with him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is straight up Taxi Driver meets the King of Comedy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
So I wonder how Marty feels about that. It's like Martin Scorsese movies got 31 nominations this year, but only one of them was directed by Marty. And
oddly, the least interesting of them.
Yeah, it's true. The least Scorsese-like of them. Anyway, I am a fan of Joker. I do think it is problematic in a lot of ways, maybe intentionally so. But I was certainly engaged by it, and I think it is subversive on a very compelling level.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting stuff on here. The making of and alternate takes and costume tests and stuff like that. The 4K is very sharp, but it's a roughly photographed film. It doesn't sort of glow in 4K the way that other films do.
Well, it's supposed to look like a film would have looked in 1973.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way it's supposed to look. It's supposed to be gritty and grainy. It's supposed to look like 5 Easy Pieces or something like that.
On another level, the Jerry Bruckheimer produced, Ang Lee directed, Will Smith starring, that used to be a trio that would have been a big hit. My goodness, what went wrong with Gemini Man, Mark? What seriously, Tim? What went wrong here?
Well,
how did it miss the mark?
The sort of visual dynamic that they're going for, number one. So we have that frame rate as well as this technology, this younging down technology. The film is more invested in both of those things, the technology in general, than it is in narrative. The narrative of that film is you've seen that movie 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I think that was an episode of the younger guy going after 4 or 5 different television shows from the 70s and 80s had that as an episode. So there's nothing about the narrative that's all that. So now we're here to watch the movie, to literally watch the movie.
Yeah.
And I found myself watching this movie mostly concerned with how much that young Will Smith looked like young Will Smith.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes go by, and I'm like, oh, wait, what happened? But because I haven't been paying any attention because I didn't care.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the technology, folks, same thing with one of those Hobbit movies. That thing
the first Hobbit. The first Hobbit.
I'm like, come on, man. Cut it out with the technology. So for me, the issue was this movie is way more concerned with that than it is with telling some sort of story that I care about.
Yeah, the 60 frames per second is just not. It's not enjoyable.
I don't want these people in the room with me. I want them on the screen.
It's what I said on Film Week. I said, here's the problem I have with 60 frames per second. I can do that with my iPhone when I do video of my daughter. But I don't even want to see her in 60 frames per second. It's just, it hurts my eyes. There is a poetry to a lower frame rate, and it's not arbitrary that they settled on 24 originally. It really isn't. It's where audiences responded, and there's something to that. Anyway, they've got a 4K special feature on here all about the special effects, which is interesting, but the movie isn't really. There also there's an alternate opening and deleted scenes and a lot of other featurette stuff, none of which is terribly interesting unless you love the movie. Deleted scenes are kind of interesting, but otherwise it looks great. Don't get me wrong. It really does have a spectacular vibe to it from a purely technical standpoint. But boy, not that pleasant.
Look, I've never been a big fan of what I call movies that are incredibly present.
Yeah.
In the way that daytime television used to be years ago, before everything sort of changed. That incredibly present sort of feel doesn't feel like film. No. Doesn't look like film. Doesn't feel like film.
Nope.
Doesn't evoke the same emotional response. 24 frames per second. That's the way your human eye works.
Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, the totally unnecessary sequel to the almost unnecessary original Maleficent retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, one of the first live-action adaptations of the animated stuff that Disney started doing. Boy, I got to tell you, Angelina Jolie looks like she doesn't really want to be in this movie. Michelle Pfeiffer looks like she's glad for the paycheck. It is a beautiful 4K rendering, but you see all the effects and all the flaws in them, and they really rushed a lot of it. And I gotta say, by and large, the story here, pretty much the same story as in Frozen 2. I'm just gonna say, whatever's going on at Disney, there's a lot of cross-pollination on the storytelling, and I think that was a mistake. If you've seen this and you've seen Frozen 2, you go...
You people need to change your offices.
You need to mix it up a little bit. So anyway, it also, I don't like how it sort of reinvents the characters it tries to redeem Maleficent in a way that I don't think makes a lot of sense. My daughter hasn't seen this yet. She saw the original Maleficent, didn't care for it a whole lot, and she loves Sleeping Beauty, which she just watched again for about the 18th time last night. So I don't know. There's not going to be another Maleficent, I'll tell you that right now. They squeeze every last bit of joy out of that one.
That's enough of that, sir.
Tim, The Lighthouse, also another indie that didn't get any Oscar love.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like that movie. Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe, sort of two-man show.
Yeah,
it's not a movie that I cared for.
No, I didn't either.
So, but a lot of people, among
Black
the indies, were engaged in it.
And I was corrected too by Christy Lemire when we were on the radio together, because I said, it's Academy ratio, 1:3:3. She says, oh no, it isn't. It's like 1:18, like 1.18 ratio. I said, really? She said, yeah. They went back to a ratio that is like a silent era aspect ratio, just to be whatever. It's what Robert Eggers does.
Yeah.
It's a bit of the same thing that he did with The Witch. He and his brother, they go back, they get all this archival material, all this archival writing. They base their dialogue on on what had been written at the time, so it really has a very authentic feel. And look, it's an old guy and a young guy who are stuck in a lighthouse in the like the 1880s, 1890s, and they progressively lose their minds and go crazy, which is Repulsion. It's Catherine Deneuve in Polanski's Repulsion, except two guys in a lighthouse.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I get it. But make a bigger movie next time. Robert Eggers is a talented guy. He can do bigger movies. So you've made 2 lengthy student films now with just a handful of people and some really great sound design, amazing sound design. But take it up a notch, dude. Stop making it in little tiny. Let's go. Now somebody is certainly going to write you a check for a $25 million movie. Make one.
Got to have a narrative. Got to have a story. That movie's not really about anything.
It's not. It's just 2 guys going nuts, and he gets to kind of do some cool visuals. And as long as we're on the subject of Joker, I thought it was really interesting that a couple of people decided, hey, let's take advantage of the fact that Joker's coming out this week with that clowny face on the cover of Joker.
Yeah.
And maybe we can piggyback on that with our clown movies. I am showing
you gotta love film marketing people.
You do. So I'm showing Tim the first one, which is from Doppelganger Releasing. It basically does cult movies. It is Gags the Clown. The joke is on us. This is from Doppelganger and Bloody Disgusting. And it's these are movies about clowns that are not nice clowns. This is just a low budget thing about a clown terrorist, and it's riding a little bit on it as much, a tiny bit. Which oddly enough, It Chapter 2 didn't get any Oscar love either. It's just it's not. There's not much going on here. It's just trying to exploit something that's very easily exploitable. Has some commentaries with the filmmakers and behind the scenes stuff, storyboards and visual effects, and if you're into low budget kind of the stuff that Doppelganger and Bloody Disgusting do, Gags the Clown on Blu-ray might be your cup of tea. On the other hand, this DVD from Magnet called Wrinkles the Clown is terrific.
Yeah.
So if you don't know about Wrinkles the Clown, and boy, that is one scary looking.
That's a scary clown face. Way scarier than Joker.
So much scarier. So here's the deal. This is Michael Beach Nichols is the documentarian who made this. This is a documentary about a very particular phenomenon and this is a real thing, and it still goes on. Wrinkles the Clown is a for-hire clown, a terrifying for-hire clown, who parents hire him to scare the living daylights out of their children as punishment. This is a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
They will call him up, and he will hide in a toy chest, or he'll hide in the closet. It's a whole setup, right? Mm-hmm. They set this whole thing up so that whenever and wherever he appears, it makes their children pee themselves. They are just absolutely horrified, and this is
vicious.
It is vicious. It's sadistic. It's child abuse. It should be illegal, but no, it isn't. So this is what a lot of these parents do. They're like, Billy doesn't make his bed, so I'm going to punish him, and I'm going to hire Wrinkles for $500 a pop to come out of the closet at 3 a.m. and go boo.
Yeah.
And then Billy will wet himself for the very last time, and he'll never forget to make his bed again.
Yeah, 20 years from now, when Billy's eating people in Detroit. We'll revisit this theory.
But here's the thing. What's interesting about this doc is you think, and then they get to who the guy is.
The guy who plays the guy.
The guy who plays the guy, but who insists on not being photographed. And thereafter, you're like, well, that's an interesting twist. He's being really anonymous. And then there's another twist at the end. It is a documentary with 2 really insane twists about an unbelievably bizarre guy and subject.
Wow.
Anyway, it is really compelling. It is a really good documentary, and maybe one of the best docs I saw last year, but it was never going to be in any awards mix. It's too far out there, but it's really worth checking out. And kudos to Michael Beach Nichols for going down the rabbit hole of this totally bizarre subject. It is a worthwhile thing to watch. Man, no one's going to be able to do regular clowns again after this and It and Joker. It's over. The whole clown thing it's finished. Yeah. It's finished. All right, shall we do the LGBT stuff?
Start some LGBT. Yeah. Very good, very, very good. Copa 1981 is a lovely film that I thoroughly enjoyed. Danin Lacerda is the Brazilian director who directed this Portuguese language film. It's really, really sweet. It's about these folks who go to this sort of club, sort of gay sauna. And they get involved and not just sex, but these relationships that are just absolutely fascinating, very, very funny. Including this one guy who has his girlfriend that he's very, very happy with, but he sort of confides in some of the gay guys about some of the ideas and thoughts. It's very funny film. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Papi Chulo. Papi Chulo was a film that I reviewed actually on the show, I guess few months ago now. Really enjoyed this film, Matt Balmer film. Matt, who happens to be from St. Louis, too, it's interesting. Alejandro Patino was a wonderful character actor in this film. Matt is this gay weatherman here in Los Angeles who goes through this breakup. He hires a handyman, this Mexican handyman who does not speak English, to come and do some work on his house after his boyfriend moves out, and he falls into this sort of funny relationship with this Mexican handyman who doesn't speak English.
Oh, good heavens!
You know, it was irritating at the time because they suggested that there were some things that were sort of insensitive about this film. This sort of well-to-do gay man hanging around with this sort of a Mexican handyman, and they said it was insensitive. I disagree completely. In order for a movie to be insensitive, it has to be ignorant of the things that it's doing. This is a film that's very aware, very conscious of the content of the film, and it put it in there on purpose so that commentary could be made about it. And what I like about the commentary is it's done very subtly. Every now and again, Papa Chulo, Alejandro's character, will simply hear or see something that Matt Bomer's character does, and he'll just roll his eyes in this particular way. And you know what? That's all the commentary you need about the dumbass thing that the gay guy just did. And it's just absolutely extraordinarily funny and poignant, and I like it a lot. Papa Chulo, loved it a lot. Cousins, I love this film from TLA releasing. This is a really neat film. You have this young man who's living with his auntie in the countryside, and just having a perfectly lovely time in his life. And his auntie invites a distant cousin, another young man, to come and live with him. This kid is just getting out of prison, and there's all kinds of. But you know what I like about this movie? There are no twists, no turns. It's not about one kid getting the other kid into trouble or anything like that. They simply drift into this lovely relationship, surrounded by this loving auntie who helps them both sort of get their lives on track and pointed in the right direction. And not a mean or evil or scary thing happens in the whole damn movie. Yeah. It's just funny and romantic and sweet, and I like it a whole lot. You want to knock off a couple of those before we come back?
Finish it off. Finish that whole bunch.
These peculiar days. This is about 8 friends who travel out to a cabin in the woods to just sort of talk and explore themselves and see what the hell is going on. It's an adolescent coming of age story. And it's really, really sweet as they're graduating from high school, and they stay in the woods and get involved and do some wacky things. And it's a little bit erotic, but again, that's not what it's about. It's really just a sort of sweet and lovely coming of age story that I actually rather liked quite a lot. Testosterone. I remember this film from 2004. Now this is a gay film. These kids aren't kidding around. It's a whole series of this film. This is volume 4. It's from Daku. It's in the same vein as all the rest of the volumes of the films. Just a sexy collection of hot gay short films. A collection of short films around several characters as they figure out what's going on in their relationships. Fish Tank is one that's particularly good. I rather enjoyed that a lot. And The Handyman. Another very, very good film. All with different directors. Testosterone, a lot of fun there. Adam is another very good little film. It's about this teenage kid. It's kind of weird, kind of awkward. It's his last summer before high school starts, and his big sister, who's like this New York lesbian, and he goes to live with her for a while, and she teaches him the whole gay scene. And it's just a really, really sweet movie about a young man and his big sister sort of hanging around. Again, love and friendships and goofiness. I like this film again because nothing really happens in it. It's just about this young man coming of age. He goes and hangs out with his big sister and meets all of her films and sort of learns what it's like to be a young man coming of age, gay in New York City. Thoroughly enjoyable little film. Chloe Levine in this film, too. Thoroughly enjoyed her. Very good.
All right,
takes care of that business.
Let's get into. So we're gonna bounce back and forth between. We got TV and we got classic movies to round out everything else. And I'm gonna start with some Arrow releasing stuff. Boy, this is a real blast from the past. Jake Speed.
Oh,
Tim, do you remember Jake Speed?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, Jake Speed was one of a whole litany of films that came around in the wake of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Romancing the Stone.
Oh my God, the Alan Quartermain film.
Alan Quartermain films. There's a whole ton. There's just a whole litany of them, and this is one of them. And this is one of the funniest and cheesiest of them. This is such an insanely stupid movie, and yet it's somehow oddly compelling. This basically is the story of a woman who is kidnapped in Paris, and her family then hires a guy named Jake Speed, who's also the subject of a lot of these novels. And he and his sidekick find out that she has been kidnapped by white slavers and
Yeah.
taken to a war-torn country in Africa, where she is at the mercy of this lunatic played by John Hurt. That's pretty much all you need to know. Other than that, this thing is just completely unhinged and totally bananas. Jake is played by Wayne Crawford. It's like the only decent thing he ever did. I don't think he shows up in anything else at all.
Those were all in the 80s, right? All those movies, the
They're all in
Quarterman,
the
they're all
80s.
those
They're
so
all
late.
in the
They all
80s.
came out. There was a whole series of them sort of biting on the Star Wars films as well,
Yeah.
Ice Pirates and
And
whatnot.
on Road Warrior.
Oh,
and Mad
yes,
Max.
and on the
There's
Road
a lot
Warrior,
of
yep,
those
yep,
knockoffs too.
yeah.
This thing is just totally bananas. It's a real hoot. It's full blown exploitation film stuff. It's totally unapologetic. It doesn't even try to convince you that it just goes. It just says just throw caution to the wind. Will be completely bananas. And it's got a new interview in it with the producer William Fay. It's got it's a really good transfer, by the way. They did a 2K restoration of the original elements, which are from the original 35 millimeter interpositive. That's really really good looking. So they give it a real nice cleanup. Still looks like an 80s film, but it's really nicely cleaned up. And it's worth a look from a nostalgia standpoint alone. I think also from a nostalgia standpoint, it's worth giving a glance at the 10-year-old. I can't believe it's been that long now. Jim Jarmusch film Limits of Control, which is such a weirdly compelling kind of quasi noir. When Jim Jarmusch gets a bee in his bonnet to do something stylistic, he especially these movies about mysterious journeys, like Broken Flowers is another one of those with Bill Murray. This one's even more mysterious. This is Isaac de Bancole from Ghost Dog. Shows up in Spain, and he's looking for something, and he's kind of on this weirdly third man like journey around to talk to strange people and figure something out. It's very noir-y, very third man, very Jarmusch, obviously in its tone. Beautifully shot by Christopher Doyle, who of course was most famous for all of his Wong Kar-wai collaborations. And it's got some really fascinating, funny, unexpected cameos that I won't name here. And I don't know that it goes anywhere necessarily satisfying, but the journey is so interesting, and it's so uniquely and weirdly Jim Jarmusch. And Isaac de Bancole is such a wonderful actor. He's just so subdued and has such a cool vibe to him. So it's worth checking out. There's an archival documentary here called Behind Jim Jarmusch, which I think is almost as important as the film itself. A featurette on the locations and a lot of other really, really fun stuff, including a video interview with the guy who wrote Stranger Than Paradise, maverick filmmakers in recent American cinema, Jeff Andrew. And this is a good little indie to revisit from 2009. The real gem from Arrow this week, though, I gotta say, is 1972's Slaughterhouse-Five, made just 3 years after the publication of Kurt Vonnegut's book. And I think that matters. Slaughterhouse-Five is a really difficult story. A lot of people said it's an unadaptable story. And George Roy Hill, who was really in his element in 1972, he had done The Sting, he had done Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, a lot of other great stuff. George Roy Hill was one of the hot directors in the early 70s. And this is literally the year before The Sting, but he's a hot guy. So George Roy Hill found a way to take this story that flips around in the universe and back and forth in time, because the character is, as he says, quote unquote, unstuck in time. And he found a way to tell this story in a narratively compelling way that was true to the book. And it's amazing. And it feels very much of its time and its era. I don't think you could do this film today. I don't think you could do right by the novel today if you were to try to redo it. It's really, really fascinating. It's got some wonderful performances in it. Michael Sachs, Ron Liebman, Valerie Perrine. It's just a superb movie. Stephen Geller gets a lot of credit for the screenplay as well. And tons of superb extras on this. They did a 4K restoration from the original camera negative that is simply to die for. Pilgrim's Progress, playing Slaughterhouse-Five, is a video interview with Perry King that is really, really worth checking out. They also have an interview with Rocky Lang, Only on Earth, presenting Slaughterhouse-Five, whose dad, Jennings Lang, was the executive producer of the film. Unstuck in Time, documenting Slaughterhouse-Five, is a video interview with Robert Crawford Jr., who did all of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, it's just really, it's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. And I especially enjoyed essentially Eternally Connected, Composing Slaughterhouse-Five, which is an interview with Daniel Schweiger, who is a film music historian that Tim and I actually kind of know from 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we all wrote for the same publication. So kind of an amazing thing, and a reversible sleeve if you're into that kind of stuff and you want to switch up the artwork. So all of that from Arrow. Really, really interesting. Great month, getting very competitive with Criterion, which brings us to Criterion. Got 4 sensational Criterion releases this week, 2 of them foreign language, and 2 of them not. The 2 foreign language ones, we're going to talk about Pedro Almodovar, because he's in the mix again this year with the Academy Awards. All About My Mother. I still think this might be his best film from 1999. Absolutely a beautiful film. Gets the wonderful, wonderful Criterion treatment here, director approved, tons of extras, interviews with everybody, Penelope Cruz and Almodovar and Almodovar's brother, television programs with Almodovar and his mother from 1999. I mean, there's a 48-minute post-screening Q&A from Madrid just this last year. Really sensational. You will develop a love for this movie like you cannot imagine, and it is maybe Penelope Cruz's best ever performance as the nun. She is just absolutely wonderful. Cecilia Roth could have easily been a major Oscar contender this year in 1999. It's a beautiful film. Cannot recommend it highly enough. All About My Mother, Pedro Almodovar on Blu-ray from Criterion. And then I'm a little bit less enthused because I'm not such a Godard fan, but Le Petit Soldat, The Little Soldier by Jean-Luc Godard from 1963, when he was in his crucial early new wave element. Can't say it's as impressive as Breathless. This came right on the heels of Breathless. It was his second film. But he's definitely getting more political here. He wanted to get into the Algerian War, which of course was a thing in 1963. He wanted to comment on current events. And I think the film is it's a little too didactic to be successful as a narrative film, but that's Godard. And Anna Karina is wonderful here, his then wife, who of course would star in several of his films, who only passed away this last year. She really makes the film. It's worth watching more for her than for Godard. Also beautifully shot by Raoul Coutard, the legendary new wave cinematographer. And doesn't have a ton of extras. It's got an interview with Godard from 1965 and an interview with actor Michael Subor from 1963, and then a Godard audio interview from 61 that obviously predates this film. But I mean, for a Godard fan, it's crucial if you want to see how he developed as a filmmaker, being his second film, doubly crucial. The other 2 Criterions, both English language. One is Failsafe by Sidney Lumet, made in 1964, totally overshadowed by Dr. Strangelove, made the same year. Basically the same subject matter. One's funny, one isn't. And I remember in my comedy class at UCLA, there was a double feature meant to show us how you take the same material and this is what makes something funny versus something making it serious. And that was the lesson. We saw Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove back to back, and what an education it was. There are scenes in the 2 films that almost exactly mirror each other. It's really fascinating. And then nobody was copying anybody. There's no plagiarism going on. It's simply that this is what was in the air at the time. It's the Cold War, the height of the Cold War. Fear of communism is unprecedented. And Stanley Kubrick saw it as an absurdist moment, and he took his film into an absurdist direction. And Sidney Lumet, who of course came from the world of live television drama, wanted to read in 12 Angry Men. He did the same thing with Failsafe. He took it into a really, really intense place. And both films are excellent. Failsafe gets unfairly overshadowed, and it shouldn't be. It is a really, really superb film. And this will hopefully restore its reputation, since we now have Criterion releases of both Failsafe and Dr. Strangelove. So this comes with some extras, audio commentary from 2000 with Sidney Lumet, who is now, of course, sadly deceased. A new interview with Jay Hoberman, one of the all-time great film critics, who talks all about this genre, and a short documentary called Failsafe Revisited, which has interviews with Lumet and screenwriter and Dan O'Herlihy, who's in it. There's also a very, very young actor in this, whom we would go on to know as JR or as Tony Nelson.
Larry Hagman.
Larry Hagman shows up in this, a very young Larry Hagman, and he's wonderful.
Didn't Larry live more or less on your side of town for many, many years?
Yes, he did. Yeah. You know what? He became famous in the vicinity because when he was retired, he was famous for his big anti-smoking crusade long before smoking was banned in bars and restaurants and everything else, and planes. And Larry would carry around a little portable battery-powered fan. And if anyone around him was smoking, he would do this. He'd pull it out and go and blow their smoke back at them. It was hysterical.
This is Larry Hagman, yeah.
Larry Hagman. And then the last criterion here from George Cukor. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who said, Hollywood doesn't make enough women's pictures. I said, no. That's not what you're saying. You're saying Hollywood doesn't greenlight enough movies directed by women, many of which we would call women's pictures. But pretty much George Cukor was a gay man, not out and out at the time. Everyone in Hollywood knew, nobody else did. But George Cukor was a gay man who made his entire career on women's pictures, basically, even including My Fair Lady, for which he finally won his long overdue Oscar. But Holiday with Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant is a classic and one of his very best from 1938. An absolutely wonderful, legendary, timeless movie. One of the all-time great romantic comedies. Really, it's just superb. It's based on a play from 1928. But don't even worry, it doesn't feel like a play. It's just two of the greatest stars in the history of Hollywood being directed by one of the all-time greatest directors and having a blast with it. Absolutely having a wonderful time. Screenplay was co-written by Sidney Buckman and Donald Ogden Stewart, also two legendary screenwriters. And what a fun film it is. You forget some of the other great supporting performances there are in here. You got Gene Dixon and Edward Everett Horton and Lou Ayres. These are no slouches either, but everybody understands they're there so that Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant can just chew the scenery and do their thing. And what a fun movie this is. You can watch it over and over and over. It's kind of a When Harry Met Sally thing a little bit. I mean, it has that it's sort of the template that all those kinds of films are based on. Meet cute, hate each other, learn to love each other, right? We with it. But anyway, all the particulars are really fun. It's a great movie. Holiday from the Criterion Collection, 1938 on Blu-ray. Gotta have it. Everyone has to own this.
A little bit of TV?
Do some TV.
All right. Veep, final season.
Look, and the complete series too,
and the complete series too. Down here, I see the box for Veep, which I don't know. You tell me. What do you think? HBO series, the final season.
I feel like this show started. It won awards, and it's the thing. It's awfully hard. She's the only one who came out of Seinfeld, and was able to make a go of it again. Everybody else kind of just either retired. Jerry Seinfeld does his, driving around in cars and coffee thing. Michael Richards hasn't done much. Jason Alexander, did the road tour for stepping in for Nathan Lane on the producers for a bit. But nobody reinvented themselves after Seinfeld in an award-winning, successful way. And she did.
It's a very odd thing. Look, I watched the show. The box seasons 1 through 7. With hours of sort of bonus features and all that kind of stuff there, and then of course the final season here. This was a series that I more appreciated than liked.
Yeah,
this is where I come down.
I probably agree with that.
I got it. We were sort of making fun and all these sort of things. And if you're a political person like me, you can kind of see the folks that they're playing, that she's playing, and all the stuff's going on there. And it's okay, but I for me, it was not a thing that was sustainable. She had a series called the New Adventures of Old Christine.
Yeah,
right before this, didn't last very long. Maybe one season, few episodes. Yeah, far and away funnier to me. But what are you gonna do?
I never really watched that.
Yeah, that one.
I gotta go down. Gotta go dig that up.
That just cracked me up completely and totally. Season 3 of The Handmaid's Tale Margaret adaptation of the Margaret Atwood. Look, again, when this appeared on Hulu, I think it was 1990 that original film. Robert Duvall, Faye Dunaway, Volker. What's his name? Who directed Volker something or other?
Yeah, Volker Schlondorf.
Thank you. Directed that film. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Not this completely reconceived that, and I was deeply engaged in it. Certainly for the first season. The second, by the time we get to the third season, which this is, I'm sorry, I'm out.
Yeah.
This is a relentlessly brutal show.
Yeah.
That does not. It just simply will not take its foot off the pedal of making me feel miserable. The whole Gilead thing. Anyway, Golden Globe winning, Emmy Award winning. Special features include a featurette called Power Play: The Gilead's Women Fight Back.
Yeah.
So again, I appreciate it, but I had to give up on The Handmaid's Tale. It made me too depressed, man. The second complete season of this interesting French series about a small town where people who had passed away years before start coming back.
Yep.
And what does it mean? What is going on? It's actually sort of an interesting series that was adapted for American television a couple of seasons ago. Didn't do quite as well in the adaptation. Nevertheless, this is interesting. English subtitles for the returned. Game of Thrones, the complete 8th season. I wonder if people who were not happy with the way Game of Thrones worked itself out, because a number of people are not happy with the way Game of Thrones worked itself out. I was not a big Game of Thrones fan, by the way, so therefore I didn't have nearly as much vested in the finale. So when I watched the finale, I just sort of appreciated it in a broad and general sort of way. Watched Game of Thrones sporadically over the course of its multi-year run, but just wasn't invested in it. So it didn't really bug me the way it ended. But people who seem to be deeply vested in this series hate it. A lot of them.
Yeah.
The way it sort of wrapped itself up.
I'm going to catch up with all of this at some point. My exposure to it has been intermittent as needed, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah,
I'll give it a go.
Anyway, here we have the complete 8th season. All kinds of bonus features on this stuff. I deleted scenes, behind the scenes featurettes. I suppose that even if you didn't like the way it sort of worked itself out, it might be interesting to pick that up, just to be a sort of completionist and be able to hang it. Big Little Lies. The complete second season, which I thoroughly enjoyed, by the way. Meryl Streep came in and did some fantastic work on Big Little Lies in the second season. And I got to tell you, I was a little surprised. I didn't really think that there was anything else to do in this series after the first season. But they figured out a path for it, which I appreciate in the second season. Bonus features include a conversation with the cast in a small featurette called The Lies Revealed. This is a really good show, and I'm really so glad that Reese and Nicole and all of these ladies, because executive producers on the show, really doing something interesting.
Yep.
Same thing happening with that new show over on, I think, Apple TV with Jennifer Aniston and all this kind of stuff. They're executive producers of these shows. They own these shows. Again, putting a lie to the notion that there is nothing for women to do in this town.
Yep.
It's just not true at all.
Yep.
I got to tell you, I'm a fan of the Orville. It's one of the few things for which I'm really a fan that Seth does. Family Guy and all that. It's all fine. But this sort of knockoff of Star Trek, the sort of Star Trek series put through the filter of it cracks me up. I can't help it. It just cracks me up.
Let me just say, I give a lot of that wouldn't exist if not for Quark, which was a short-lived series created by the late Buck Henry, who just died last week.
Yes.
And Quark, for those who don't know, and Quark's out on DVD. It came out years and years ago. It's only like 8 episodes. Quark was a Star Trek knockoff starring Richard Benjamin as the captain of an interstellar garbage scow. Had a Spock knockoff character on it. Had a couple of really hot twins who were clones. I mean, it was fantastic.
No, he was making pointed fun, but having a good time.
So much fun.
Special features include deleted scenes and all kinds of gag reels and stuff like that, and some stuff from the Orville. Oh, let me just kill my phone real quick. while they were down at Comic-Con this past season. So a lot of fun there. And so appropriate then, Star Trek Discovery Season 2.
Nice.
I watched Season 1. See, this is that CBS All Access series.
Yeah.
Interesting because it's coming out, I think, in the next day or week or so. They're going to have that Picard series.
I know.
Sort of coming along. The mixed reviews of all of this kind of stuff. I watched that first season. Some of it was sort of interesting to me, the way they wrapped in the story of Pike. Yeah. And we meet young Spock, young man Spock. We meet child Spock and a young man Spock. She's supposed to be his sister. Yeah. Right, in this series. Yeah. Interesting that she's human, raised by Sarek and Spock and his family. Yeah. But she's supposed to be his big sister in the series. Yeah. She's Spock's older sister. Uh-huh. Yeah. I got a problem with that. Yeah. Because I've been watching this series for, in the context of the series. Yeah. And Spock never mentioned a sister. No. And I'm like, we're retconning a lot of stuff. Don't do that. Don't do that. There had to be a way to look back over the history of this series, figure out somebody for her to be that would make sense in the context of the history of the series. That's all you had to do. Other than that, I rather enjoy what goes on in the series. But that notion bugs the hell out of me. Yeah. MacGyver Season 3. This is young MacGyver, of course. Yeah. You look, man, I can't help it. I'm one of these guys who like all of the sort of remakes of all the crap that I liked when I was in the 80s, the MacGyvers, the Magnum PIs, all that kind of stuff. I can't do it. I can't do it. I cannot watch some other guy who's not, Richard Dean, whatever his name is, Anderson, running around pretending to be MacGyver. I just can't do it. PI. I'm sorry. You're not Tom Selleck. You can't be Magnum PI.
I agree. But somehow they made Hawaii Five-0 work with a different McGarrett.
Yeah. And they do
Jack Lord.
They do crossovers, you know that?
Yeah, I know.
Magnum PI. That bugs the hell out of me. Nevertheless, this is the third season of the MacGyver, of the new MacGyver. I suppose it's all fine, but it's not something that I watch, so I'm not going to pretend like I do. Krypton. The complete second and final season of Krypton. This was a lot of fun for me, actually. I rather enjoyed this when it was on. Man. I'm getting phone calls left and right over here. Okay, I rather enjoyed this. I like the reappearance of the young General Zod, on his ruthless mission to rebuild Krypton, all kinds of stuff. This is among the many Superman things that are sort of happening right now. This Krypton series was one that I thoroughly enjoyed.
All right, I got 3 from the Warner Archive Collection, all new to Blu-ray. They're doing a lot more Blu-ray direct from Warner Archive, and it's great, and I'm thrilled. 2 from the 50s, 1 from the 60s. I'm going to start with the one from the 60s because it's such a 60s movie. It's just so incredibly 60s. This was made in 1965, directed by Michael Anderson, who was famous basically for a minute because he directed the first big widescreen Oscar winner, Around the World in 80 Days. Not a good movie, but anyway, he directed it, and that sort of put him on the map coming out of the UK. Made a lot of other relevant movies, The Queller Memorandum, Pope Joan in 1972, Chase a Crooked Shadow in 1958. He made a few All the Fine Young Cannibals in 1960. But Operation Crossbow was one that really, really kind of stuck for a lot of people. Produced by Carlo Ponti, then the husband of Sophia Loren, who of course the same year produced Dr. Zhivago. Yeah. And that's why this got a little overshadowed. But really, Operation Crossbow is a pretty terrific World War II adventure action thing. It's somewhat based in fact. You can decide how much of it is. But George Papard and Sophia Loren, married to the producer, are just a superstar couple. They're really, really fun. And Trevor Howard and John Mills and Tom Courtenay all show up and Anthony Quayle in supporting parts, who've all, of course, shown up in a lot of David Lean movies and did this same year. Tom Courtenay, of course, was in this and in Dr. Zhivago, so I think he probably got a discounted rate from Carlo Ponti, who was, whatever. But anyway, this is it's a pretty fun film. It's a pretty fun, action spy thing, and it's kind of in that same vein with Where Eagles Dare and The Dirty Dozen and all the guys on a mission stuff that was really, really big at the time. And it's a little shorter than most of those movies. It's only 116 minutes. It's worth a blast.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Here's a really interesting one from 1956, an RKO film called Great Day in the Morning, which kind of probably has fallen off a lot of people's radar. But what's interesting about this is it's directed by Jacques Tourneur, but it's a noir set in the West. Now, Jacques Tourneur, one of the all-time great noir directors, but what he does is he basically takes a scenario from the Old West, right set in Denver, Colorado, right before the Civil War is going to break out, and he turns it into a noir.
Yeah.
And it's great. You've got, you have all of the tension, the pre-Civil War tension, abolitionists and Southerners who are in the town. They're in Denver. Denver was very much a divided town, a frontier town, kind of on the outskirts of the war.
Yeah.
But the war was being fought internally by the residents.
Yeah.
And Robert Stack.
Oh, Virginia Mayo.
Virginia Mayo is great.
Yeah.
She's terrific. But Robert Stack wants none of it. He wants gold. And that's the only reason he's there is for gold. And all these interesting tensions and all these interesting kind of Maltese Falcon type figures like Raymond Burr show up. And Raymond Burr is fantastic. He's just, his name is Jumbo Means.
Yeah.
What a great name.
Well, I tell people all the time, I have to remind people all the time, students anyway, that noir is not a genre. Noir is a style that you can apply to any genre.
That's it.
There's noir horror films, noir westerns, noir, all kinds of them, all gangster films.
Yeah. It's terrific. It really, really is terrific. It's a wonderful rediscovery. And it's beautifully shot too. It's worth finding just so that you can get your Jacques Tourneur IQ up and running. It's really terrific. It has some good special features on it. Some MGM shorts that are really, really fun. The Ship That Died, Strange Glory, The Face Behind the Mask, and The Magic Alphabet.
Great Day in the Morning. Great title, by the way.
Great title. And then here's the real gem for the Warner Archive releases this week. Gosh, what an amazing movie. The Bad and the Beautiful, one of the all-time great MGM non-musicals. MGM did not only make musicals, and in 1952, they made one hell of an amazing movie directed by a guy who is widely known for only musicals, Vincent Minnelli.
Vincent, yeah.
What a great thing this was, though. Let's take Vincent, give him a non-musical, and let's just let the world see the inner guts of Hollywood in their most horrendous, just bare it all.
Yeah.
And let's get this out of our system.
Oh, dude, Lana Turner.
Oh, my gosh. It is just this really, really, I mean, it comes 2 years after Sunset Boulevard kind of opened the doors to say, we can let the world see how awful this business is.
It's a movie
really
about
is.
Hollywood. It's about a producer.
And
his manipulations of
Kirk Douglas.
Everybody, yeah.
Kirk Douglas playing this just absolutely brutal, ruthless, take no prisoners guy. And what he does and the enemies that he makes, and everyone hates him. And it's just fantastic. He will do whatever it takes to get the film made.
Everybody's in this movie. Walter Pidgeon, Dick Pyle, Gloria Graham,
so good.
Gilbert Rowland, Leo G. Everybody.
It's so good. Yeah. It's just so good. And produced by John Houseman, who would go on to be, of course, a great actor in and of himself and an Oscar nominee, but just superb. The Bad and the Beautiful. One of the all-time great inside Hollywood movies. Kirk Douglas, Lana Turner, Dick Powell, and Walter Pidgeon.
Yeah.
And then want to get into some film movement Blu-rays, too. Classics. One of them, I'll do the two Studio Canal ones first. These are both really, really interesting film movement classics releases. Probably fell off somebody's radar a long time ago, but they are classic Ealing Studio comedies. Passport to Pimlico by Henry Cornelius, and The Titfield Thunderbolt by Charles Crichton, who, of course, made a comeback with Fish Called Wanda many years later. These are both in the Studio Canal library now, and they have been re-released by Film Movement under the Film Movement Classics line. They are wonderful and hilarious, and the Ealing comedies are just incomparable. Really incomparable. The Passport to Pimlico was made in 1949. Has a fantastic pre-My Fair Lady performance by Stanley Holloway that is just going to leave you in absolute and total stitches. Hermione Baddeley, Margaret Rutherford. These are all wonderful, wonderful performances, and the movie is so funny. Written by T.E.B. Clarke, and it's just great. It's all about an unexploded World War II bomb that explodes many, many years later and reveals something that winds up setting off this bizarre series of events that it just gets so absurd. It just gets funnier and funnier. The Titfield Thunderbolt, Charles Crichton film, that is from 1953 and also written by T.E.B. Clarke, who was kind of their all-time great screenwriter. Shot by Doug Slocum, the great British cinematographer who would go on to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's at least 2 sequels. And this is all about British Railways closing a particular branch line and really upsetting the residents who decide they're going to reopen it.
Yeah, run it themselves. That's so funny.
Once again, a simple event that turns into an outlandish series of unintended consequences. Two really terrific films on Blu-ray: Passport to Pimlico and the Titfield Thunderbolt. And then the last of the film movement ones, and I'll turn this back over to Tim, is The Tiger of Eschnapur and The Indian Tomb. This is a classic two-film epic by Fritz Lang that is extraordinary. He made this in 1959, long after what should have been his heyday. But it's this amazing adventure epic set in India, but made in Germany, and he had written it during the silent era and held on to it. And it's just the backstory of this is really extraordinary. And you learn this in the audio commentaries from David Callett, who I just adore. There's also a documentary all about it, gets into these details, the Indian epic it's called. And it really is. You've got to just watch this. It puts Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom to shame. It's sort of in the same milieu, but not. And Deborah Paget, who plays this dancer, is wonderful in this. Really a fantastic adventure epic. It is 203 minutes all in between the two films. And it is superb, and it's on Blu-ray from Film Movement Classics. And thank you, Film Movement, for doing this. What a wonderful, wonderful thing to get on Blu-ray at the beginning of 2020.
Outstanding stuff. A little bit more TV.
Yeah.
I came to this series, this Kevin Bacon, Aldous Hodge series, City on a Hill, Showtime series. Kind of late. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's set in Boston in the early 1980s. It's about a young DA goes to Boston, to do his thing, and he just finds a city that's rife with all kinds of corruption, racism, this, that, and the other thing, and it's all about how the city tries to eat him and how he tries to push back against it. It's really, really good movie. Kevin Bacon playing this young cop. Family story. It's just an outstanding, dramatic movie. Love that it's set in the 90s. It has that sort of 90s look. Everybody wearing those double-breasted coats and that feel. And I don't know, it just resonated with me deeply. In terms of memory. Special features on each one of the episodes, including episode 3, in which Kevin's wife, Kira Cedric, directs.
Fantastic. I'm glad she's doing that now.
The Loudest Voice in the Room. Interesting. Bombshell is a movie that's roaming around out there right now, doing Oscar season. A couple of decent nominations for Bombshell. There, of course, Charlize won a Golden Globe for her portrayal. So this movie, The Loudest Voice in the Room, is about Roger Ailes. With, of course, Russell Crowe playing Roger, John Lithgow.
John Lithgow, yeah.
In
Who
that
is
movie,
the better Ailes?
You're far and away Roger.
Yeah.
Far and away
Russell.
I'm sorry. Far and away Russell. More foreboding. It has a lot of it has to do with the filmmaking too.
Because I always felt like John Lithgow was not playing Roger Ailes so much as John Barrymore.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, looking like John Lithgow in a Roger Ailes suit. Whereas Russell in this film is kind of disappearing into it a little bit. But besides that, this is a far and away better film or series or whatever you want to call it. In any case, special features includes creating the loudest voice. This film I think is a better movie than Bombshell for a couple of different reasons. Not just because that film is told from the perspective of the women, and this one is not really told from anybody's perspective. It's more of a sort of third person kind of thing. So it hovers above it a bit, but I think it gives us a crisper and sharper understanding of what was going on there. Family Guy season 17. This has uncensored episodes, deleted scenes, all kinds of stuff. If you're a fan of the Family Guy, you want to get a hold of this 20-episode disc. It's a 3-disc set. Deleted scenes, featurettes, all kinds of great stuff. And again, uncensored and uncut for those of you that like your Family Guy raw. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This is a wonderful episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers and Making Mistakes. Of course, Tom Hanks nominated Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. The film, he did okay. The film, okay as well. Wonderful. This particular episode of Mr. Rogers Making Mistakes. It's the one where Mr. Rogers explains that everybody makes mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. You don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed. And you should always take chances. And it's okay if you make a mistake, because then you'll know not to do that again.
I think I need to watch that again.
Yes.
I didn't learn the lesson the first time.
It's one of those wonderful things. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Mr. Rogers and Making Mistakes. Wonderful.
We got some Shout Factory releases here, some Shout Select line stuff. It's really worth mentioning. We got volumes 95 and 97 from the Shout collect. Well, 96 I think we talked about previously. Anyway, Candy with Heath Ledger and Abby Cornish and Jeffrey Rush is out. That is volume 95. This movie fell off of everybody's radar pretty quickly. This is from 2006. Probably worth checking out again. It's one of Heath Ledger's more interesting kind of self-destructive performances, and especially considering how he died, it is a little bit eerie to watch. He's kind of a reckless bohemian guy, and a poet, and he falls in love with Abby Cornish, and it then devolves into drug addiction and some other stuff. Really interesting audio commentary on here from Neil Armfield and Luke Davies, the writer-director team, and a couple of featurettes. But it is it's interesting. It's a worth rediscovering film, and I'm glad they brought it out again. It's a very, very good performance by Ledger, and I'll leave it at that. But knowing what happened, it's quite a sad film to watch.
Yeah.
The other one is Brewster's Millions, which is getting redeemed. The 1985 Richard Pryor film that did not get well reviewed at the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here's the thing. Brewster's Millions is a book that was turned into a play, that was turned into a movie in the silent era twice in 1914, 1921, turned into screwball comedies in the early sound era twice, 1935, 1945, was done on television. Like 5 foreign language adaptations were done in various countries. Brewster's Millions is such a great premise. This thing has been done to death, and I'm expecting that it will be done again very, very soon. It's been too long. 1985 it's over 30 years ago. It's time that we have another Brewster's Millions, and I guarantee you it'll happen again. But this one was designed specifically as a vehicle for Richard Pryor, who at the time was kind of running out of stuff to do. In 1985, he wasn't doing the Gene Wilder stuff anymore, and the Superman thing hadn't really panned out. And so it was like, well, we need a vehicle, so let's resurrect Brewster's Millions, and Pryor can really nail it. And let's stick John Candy in there as a sidekick, because he's funny too, and we'll get something out of it. Now the whole angle here, it's a great conceit, which is that he's a guy who is just an ordinary guy who has received a huge inheritance, but there's a hitch. He has to spend an enormous amount of money, in this case $30 million, in 30 days, in order to inherit $300 million. Now, here's the problem I've always had with the premise. If somebody gives me $30 million and says, you got to spend this in 30 days to inherit 300, I'm saying, no, I'm good with the 30. I'm good with the 30. I'm just going to fail at that. And, oh, darn, I didn't get the 300. But you know what? I got 30 million. I'm good. Thanks.
Well, there are all kinds of wacky caveats. So you can't tell anybody. So he looks like this some
And people try to stop him. Like they're losing their minds. It's like, what are you doing? You're
John Candy.
He's losing his mind.
He's hysterical in this.
I mean, so even though the premise is ridiculous, even though it's always been absurd, it does let comics be comics. And I will say this. People were too hard on this in the 85.
Oh, yeah.
They were way too hard on this.
I like that movie. I saw that movie in theaters when it came out.
I did
thought it was
too.
Quite shot. Who plays the female? Was it Troy Bear? Was it Radon Chong? I can't remember who it was.
It's
It was
Lynette McKee.
Lynette McKee, of course, who had been in Any Which Way But Loose.
Yes, and she's also in Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. Yeah, so it was really
and she's wonderful.
Yeah,
whatever happened to her? She's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, Jerry Orbach shows up, and Hume Cronin. I mean, they got all kinds of interesting people who show up. And what's really fun here is Walter Hill directed this. As long as we're talking about Vincent Minnelli stepping outside, like Walter Hill, the guy who makes shoot
Last Man Standing.
Let's let him show his lighter side. And you know what? It's fine. It's not brilliant, but there are scenes that are incredibly funny in hindsight. And I think people were much too cruel to this film at the time. Joel Silver and Lawrence Gordon produced it. Two guys known for action movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just got all these action movie people and just let them go a little bit light. And it's really fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. New audio commentary with William Bibiani and Whitney Seibold, hosts of the critically acclaimed podcast. And then an interview with Herschel Weingrod, screenwriter. And they also include the 1945 Dennis O'Keefe and Helen Walker version of the film, 79 minutes long. Which was the last one before this. If you want to see the 1935 film or whatever, you'll have to find it elsewhere. But it's fun. So Brewster's Millions. Also from Shout Factory, we got the Universal Horror Collection, Volume 3. This is a lot of kind of Universal Horror branded films that people have otherwise forgotten about. They're not so great, but if you're into the genre, it's worth checking out. Tower of London, Man-Made Monster, Horror Island, and The Black Cat. The Black Cat's probably the best of these. Basil Rathbone and Bela Lugosi kind of hold it down. Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff are also quite fun with Vincent Price in The Tower of London. Lon Chaney Jr., Man-Made Monster. Horror Island is probably the least interesting of them, apart from the fact that it co-stars Leo Carrillo, the Mexican actor who was very much a big philanthropist and conservationist at the time. And there's a beach named after him just a little bit north of here, the Leo Carrillo State Beach. So that's interesting to always kind of rediscover some of those figures. Also, the very underrated Dracula, starring Frank Langella.
Oh, my favorite Dracula performance of all. Frank Langella is amazing in that film. 1979, yeah.
You know what else is amazing?
Yeah.
The John Williams score.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great score.
Great cinematography, great production design. If you've never seen that film, the end of that film, when Dracula, meets the demise that he always meets at the end of every film, so I'm not... it's just absolutely astounding. On the ship of that deck, the deck of that ship. Oh, it's just beautiful.
It's fantastic. You got a great commentary here, a new commentary by film critic Konstantin Nazar, which is really terrific. That's on disc 2, which is the theatrical version, and then on disc 1, which is the 1991 director's cut. John Badham did a director's cut? Are you kidding me? Yes, he did. You get the actual commentary by John Badham, as well as a new interview with John Badham, who is just so much fun. One of my favorite John Badham quotes is one that Ray always brings up, which is that John Badham said, "Anybody tries to call me an auteur, I'll kick him in the ass." He didn't want to be called an artist.
Yeah.
John Badham wanted to be known as just a guy that made movies. He's a workaday guy. And
Doc Hollywood.
His book is terrific. Anyway, John Badham, in 1979. This is right before he really launched. He had a great year. Just a couple of years later, when he did War Games and Blue Thunder in the same year. But Dracula, came right on the heels of Saturday Night Fever. He was showing he could do a lot of stuff. It's got a wonderful score by John Williams, produced by Walter Mirisch, and executive produced by Marvin Mirisch. And Walter Mirisch, of the Mirisch brothers, who of course did tons of great movies, including all the Pink Panther movies in the 1960s. I should point out Walter Mirisch is still alive.
Yeah.
He is like 97, 96, 97, 98, something like that. I think he's 98, might even be 98. He is still around. He still puts on a tie and a coat every day and goes to his office on the Universal lot every day. He has, as he has for like the last 60 years, he's still developing projects, still looking to remake stuff. It's quite amazing. As it happens, Brandt, the writer-director of our short, was on the Universal lot some years ago and got into an elevator with this old guy and just started having a conversation. And it was right at the end of that conversation, he discovered, I'm talking to Walter Mirisch. Are you kidding me? There he was, going to work in the tower. It's fantastic. So anyway, Dracula, Frank Langella and Laurence Olivier and Donald Pleasance. Just a superb film. Really, really great. Written, we should point out, by W.D. Richter, who would go on to do Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah, Buckaroo Banzai.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Fantastic. A little bit of TV.
Yeah.
So seasons 11 and 12 of Ancient Aliens. To the set both of these volumes 1 and volumes 2 from the History Channel. Look, if you know the Ancient Aliens series, you know that all of them are constantly shedding new light on the theory that extraterrestrials not only visited humans on Earth in the distant past, but are hanging around now. That's what these are all about, and they always have been.
And yeah, let's do one more. And then we'll call it quits.
This 3 DVD collector's set of Deadline, When Reporters Ruled and Were Heroes. I love this 39 episode complete series because of what it is. First of all, most of the stuff was lost. You haven't seen this on any of the the stations that run all the repeats of episodes or anything like that. You haven't seen this because this was lost for a very, very long time. What I love about this series, particularly now, is that at the center of each one of these episodes is a newspaper person, a reporter. You're using the shoe leather to figure out what the hell is going on. And they're the heroes of the series in the same way that cops were the heroes of other series. I cannot think of an equivalent. What was that series in the 80s with Lou Grant? I think it was called Lou Grant.
Oh, it was Lou Grant.
Yeah,
for sure.
Lou
Yeah,
Grant.
Lou Grant.
That was the sort of intrepid crusading reporter types. This entire series is about that. And as we live in a world today, fake news and all this kind of stuff, the sort of notion that standing between us very often and politicians and criminals and all kinds of stuff are reporters. It's just a wonderful notion. The series ran from 1959, 1961. It really is great. 39 episodes. Some actors in this series that will blow your mind. The actors that came through this series, so you'll enjoy it completely. All kinds of bonus features on it as well. So if you're a fan of journalism and reporters and reporting, watch Deadline, When Reporters Were Heroes. 39 episodes, the whole complete series.
Fantastic. All right, folks, that's it. We will be back next week, and we'll have a terrific week. Start doing your Oscar prognostication. That's what this time of year is all about. We only got a few weeks. It's the earliest Oscar season in history.
Yeah.
See you next week.